All right, guys, just to kind of give you a little brief description of what we're going to do before we get started. I'm Steve, by the way, owner of Bodhi. Martin Diedrich, I probably don't even need to introduce him. He's going to be talking to you about the roaster and roasting. But first, I'm going to give you a little kind of tour of our place, what we do here, talk about some sourcing and importing. We'll come back in here, get you guys some coffee and pastries, and then kind of talk to you about roasting and things like that, okay? If you have any questions, just fire away while we're going. And
how long has the place been open?
This actual location's only been open about a year and a half.
That's great.
I've been importing coffee since 2008. So, okay. So let's kind of walk in the back. We'll talk more back here. It's a little quieter, and then we'll come back this way. All right. When we came here, we were just looking for a bigger warehouse. All I did is import green coffee from the farms. Then we found this spot with more of a busy retail front, and we kind of did a whole coffee experience here. That was our goal, is to educate people like yourself. I don't know how much you guys know about coffee, but you know, we'll kind of go from there. But this is our quality control lab. This is where we cup all the coffees. We grade all the coffees. There's a whole process of grading coffee. I don't know if you're familiar with that. So we only buy coffees that are 86 points and above, which is a very high realm in specialty coffee. To be specialty, it has to be 80 points and above. So this is kind of where we grade all our green coffees, decide if we're going to buy them from the farms, and then do kind of quality control for the cafes and roasting part.
Do the farms send you, or do you go get it?
Both. So we're very well known for directly sourcing. So we go to all the farms and source coffee every year, you know, depending on the harvest. And then farmers send us samples constantly as well. So especially ones that we have a relationship with, that we've been dealing with for a while. Let's go out in the warehouse. We can hear a little better.
And that grading, 80 and above,
Yeah.
is that like, is that certified, or is it accredited, or do people kind of grade their own? Is there a lot
Well, there's a process you're supposed to go through. It's called a Q grader process. I don't know if you've heard of it. So there's 3 of us here that are licensed Q graders. And once you're licensed Q grader, you're licensed to grade coffee at that level. But there are a lot of people that are great cuppers, that can grade their own coffee without being licensed. They know what they're doing, but you're supposed to be actually certified to do it. Okay. So this is Jared, by the way, kind of my right-hand man. So he might be talking a little bit too. So this is our warehouse. Come on out. This is coffee, green coffee, raw. I don't know how much coffee knowledge everyone has here, so I'm going to kind of start from the bottom and just talk like there's very little. But this is green coffee raw from the farms. Okay, we bring it in by the container. This, like I said, this is coffee we go to origin and source. I would say 95% of what we do, we consider direct trade, where we actually go to the farm and choose our coffees there at the farm.
How much coffee would you typically buy? How many pounds or pallets or truckloads?
So,
What's the container? You said
yeah.
buy the container.
So a container is, well, it depends on which origin we're getting it from, but usually it's 320 60-kilo sacks, which is about 132 pounds a sack. If we're getting it from Central America, it's 275 154-pound sacks. So bigger sacks from different regions. They vary in size. But this is raw green coffee from the farm after the mill, after it's processed.
Sorry, basically a shipping container though, right?
Yeah, one 20-foot shipping container will arrive here. We'll unload it by hand, not fun. And we palletize it, as you can see, either like 10 to a pallet or 25 to a pallet. And
Sorry, I interrupted. Back to the green.
yeah, no, this is just, I didn't know if anyone had actually seen green coffee from the farms, but this is what it looks like once it's milled, processed. And there's different processes, by the way. So when we're sourcing coffee from the farms, there's coffee cherries on a tree. Okay, that's kind of a picture for you guys to picture. There's 3 different processes in general. There's natural processed, honey processed, and wash processed. So we're very into trying to find unique coffees. A lot of those happen to be natural processed and honey processed. Washed is probably what most people are used to drinking on a daily basis. Washed coffee's most of the market. But some of the great unique coffees are natural processed or honey processed. So a natural process, just to kind of tell you how it's grown. There's a picture back there of maybe a natural coffee. It stays in the skin. They'll dry it on raised beds or patios in that skin. That skin kind of gets like a raisin once it dries. But that adds a lot of body to the coffee, a lot of fruitiness to the coffees, really changes the complexity of the coffees.
Roast that, how thick is that skin that comes off?
Well, they still mill it after that, so it's still going to look similar to this. Some of the skin sticks to the seed in the naturals and honeys. It looks a little different than the wash.
How does honey work?
Honey's a little different. So they'll take the skin off and leave the mucilage on there. So it gets a little sticky. That's why they call it honey process. That's how it came with that. That also adds some sweetness, a lot more brightness to most of the coffees that are processed properly. That's a harder process. But so they'll dry it with the mucilage on the bean before it's milled. So those are kind of the three main different processes that there are.
Remove the mucilage?
Yeah, it'll still be milled after that.
And then
Correct.
try to remove that?
Correct. Everything's kind of washed and milled after all that process is done. So this is kind of the importing side, the direct trade side of the business, and we're very hands-on with a lot of the farmers. We pay them kind of premiums for coffees that we source. We want to stay in that high realm of specialty coffee, which is harder and harder to find every year. So you have to give these farmers incentive to produce good coffee. Otherwise, why grow coffee? They can grow something else and make more money with it. So if we're paying them a premium to grow good coffee, they want to make better coffee year after year after year. And then we develop, I kind of feel like our business, and especially in coffee, it's all about relationships, whether it's with farmers, people like yourself, roasters, everyone in between. Try to develop relationships with these farmers where we're buying the whole crop every year. Some of them only produce 60, 70 bags, maybe even less, a father-daughter farm, and that's their whole, livelihood, or a couple hundred sacks a year. That's all they do. So if we can give them a premium, teach them how to produce a more sustainable coffee, that's what we try to do, and try to develop that relationship, nurture it, and keep those coffees coming year after year.
So it's a big world. Do you kind of focus on certain geographic countries?
Anywhere that produces coffee, and if we can find good coffee there.
Finding locations changing?
Every year,
patterns
weather patterns definitely have a lot to do with it. Locations, there's problems in different regions every year. So Central America one year will have some sort of disease, or roya. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a problem they had a couple years ago. Or Sumatra, Indonesia might have an insect infestation one year. So every year seems to have some problems somewhere. So yes, and the weather definitely has a big factor, rain. But for the most part, everywhere coffee's grown, we're looking for good coffee in those areas. And coffee kind of is cyclical too. It cycles. You might have a really great coffee from a farm one year. You go back wanting that great coffee the next year. They grew it great. They did the process great, but it drops, and then it kind of seems to cycle back up. That's what I've noticed with my experience, at least. It's not necessarily great the next year.
Yeah.
So I think it has a lot to do with what you asked, with the weather and the trees and the way they grow the coffee.
The cycle, the growing cycle might have.
I think that definitely has a lot to do with it too. So this is the main part of our business, and how I started in coffee was sourcing coffee. For the first 2 years, I only sold Sumatran coffee. It's all I could afford to buy. We only sold Sumatran coffee to roasters, and as time went by and we grew, we were able to source coffee and make relationships with other farmers and kind of provide it to roasters all over the United States, especially locally. And then something that makes us a little different too, the bigger importers, they import coffee, whether it be commodity, specialty, everything in between, and they're doing volume. We're not able to keep up with them money-wise, so we do a more niche business of really good coffees. And then we break the bags, and we'll sell to people like yourself. Say you want to buy a home roasting machine and home roast, we'll sell 1 pound online, or people come in and pick it up, 5, 10 pounds. So that makes us a little different in the industry too, as we cater to any size roaster. I don't care if you're buying a truckload or 1 pound, we're going to give you the same attention. And my goal here is more in coffee too, since I started, is kind of educate people about specialty coffee. People don't realize there's a whole nother world out there of coffee. Everyone just thinks, oh, go to the mobile station and get that dirty cup of coffee. No, once you have specialty coffee and you experience it, it's hard to go back. So anyways, this is how we started. This is the importing business. And like I said, when we came here, it was an empty warehouse. There was no cafe, no walls even in this building. And but with the busy street there, I kind of felt like we could kind of do a whole coffee experience. The cupping lab, we let people come in for training courses, experience that. roastery up front, so you guys can kind of see the coffee and what it takes to process coffee. That's another thing I want to stress too, is people don't really realize what goes into coffee. It's crazy how many hands that coffee touches before you actually get to drink that cup. So, from the grower, the people cleaning the coffee, the loading the coffee, unloading the coffee, roasting the coffee, baristas making the coffee. It's crazy. So much work goes into this little cup of coffee, and we try to kind of make it the best of the best.
So the 15,000 square feet, you first took over just to do the importing and selling green coffee.
Correct.
And then at some point you added, did you add the roaster at the same time you added the retail?
We had been roasting a little bit at our other warehouse. It was more of a kind of a side thing for us.
There's another warehouse?
No, we had a smaller warehouse that we moved here. This is a larger one. We had a little roaster there. We would roast a little bit on the side, and then when we
That's in the,
no, it's actually a smaller version of that one.
Okay.
So yeah, that one does 25 pounds at a time. Martin will talk to you more about that in a little bit. But the one we had before that only did 10 pounds at a time. Yeah, 10 pounds at a time. So
do you have just the one retail?
we have another little cafe in Anaheim Hills. I don't know if you guys are from around here. Is everyone kind of from around here? No? So it's about 5 miles from here, and it doesn't have a warehouse. It's just the front version up there, and that little 10-pound roaster I just told you about is in that location. So we opened the cafe about a year and a half ago, and roastery, and that's when we started. It's definitely had brought some awareness to specialty in this area, and people kind of appreciate seeing how their coffee is, or even people into the craft beer industry, everything. They want to know how their food's made or where it's coming from and how it's crafted, and there really is an art form and a craft to roasting coffee.
When you look at the business now, is it still primarily selling green coffee?
I would say for me, yes. My main business is sourcing and selling green coffee. The cafe and roasting is growing, but it's secondary for me. This is where we started. This is our roots, and this is kind of what is the bulk of our business here for sure.
So you have the second cafe. Do you see a third and more?
Yeah, actually we do. So we're doing we already are starting to build out of the third cafe. It's definitely had a positive response here in North Orange County, and that's kind of where we're focused. Yeah, doing a build out in a city, Placentia, which is not too far from here. So we are doing expanding the cafe part, and but the green is our main business.
And the name? Where did the name come from?
Bodhi Leaf. So a lot of people ask me that, and it's a weird question for me to answer. But when I started this company, I told you I don't know how to explain it, but it was a lower point in my life where I didn't know what I was going to do to support my family. So more spiritual point in my life. And the name kind of came from kind of a spiritual, more Buddhist aspect of thinking is how the name came about. People ask me that all the time. A little weird name for a coffee business, but that's where it came from. So do you guys have any more questions kind of for me from the green coffee side, the production side?
So what is the shelf life of green coffee before you would be concerned that it's going to lose some of its?
That's a good question. So more than 90, probably 98% of the coffees we get in here, we have them shipped in grain. These are Grain Pro bags, okay? So it's more of like a freshness liner. In the olden days, they used to just ship coffee in the burlap sacks, and after it would sit for a few months, it would taste like this burlap. Coffee absorbs whatever it's next to. Like if we shipped coffee in a container with fish, it would taste like fish, okay? It absorbs it like a sponge. Green coffee does. So this plastic liner not only helps with that, but it also keeps it fresher for 3 to 6 months more than if we just had it in a burlap sack. But in general, if you store it properly, coffee is good from harvest to harvest, so about a year, as long as you store it right. It does lose its freshness as time goes on, but it's not drastic. And then after that, you have your, say Central America has a harvest in February, okay? That coffee is good till that next February, and then it's considered past crop because now there are new crops coming on. So now that's considered a past crop coffee. Still not horrible. I've had some coffees that are way better past crop than some of the new crops, but average shelf life. We usually turn it here in about a 5-month period. Is kind of how fast ours.
Most of the time it's ready for shipment from its origin source, I guess harvested, it usually takes a time to process.
Mhm.
From the time it's picked from the tree,
Yep.
it's going to be months before it's ready to be loaded into a container and shipped.
Yeah. What does harvest mean?
Well, so
Harvest date or whatever.
when the coffee trees are flowering, so flowering, then those flowers turn into coffee cherries, okay? And then if the farmers are doing it properly and not using machines, they're just picking the ripe red cherries. They might hit that tree 5 times, because some of the berries might be ready the first time, some the second, third, fourth, fifth.
You're all in February, say?
Well, it
In
would all happen in a few week period
Yeah,
for
okay.
sure. Then those are going to dry for a couple weeks on the patio, get milled for a week or so. So, say a month to 2 months before they're shipping that coffee to you, maybe even a little more. And then it takes, depending on the region that it's coming from, we can get stuff from Central America here in 2 weeks. Stuff from Brazil and say Indonesia, those are more like 30 days. Ethiopia, 45 days. They're in transit on the water for a long time. So then customs, that's something we deal with as an importer a lot. They'll take our bags, pull them into exams for contraband, because where coffee is grown is where all the corruption is as well. So they're looking for drugs, different things like that. They cut open our bags. It happens all the time. Probably 3 out of 5 containers are getting some sort of exam in our customs here. So that's something we deal with a lot.
Sorry. How did you first develop direct trade relationships with farmers in the first place? Were you using auctions, previous importers, or?
So for me, I flew to Sumatra, and I was going there to buy 1 container of coffee. So I went there, just met with a few different, they weren't even farmers that I met with there. It was more like brokers. Kind of developed a relationship there and started buying Sumatran coffee. From there, when I started going to Central America, South America, and sourcing other coffees, a lot of that was just farmers contacting me or roasters that I had been dealing with, new farmers in that area, and I would go to origin with those roasters, and we kind of developed relationships over time. I saw you raise your hand.
So I'm from Sumatra.
Okay.
And then because I've seen changes.
Uh-huh.
Because they say that you guys always do middle people.
Okay.
But then now most of from US Americans, they do direct trade.
Correct.
They directly go to the farmers.
So Sumatra's, I call it, so for me it has a special place in my heart because it's the only, I started there. It's the only coffee I sold. I love Sumatran coffee, but I also call it the black sheep of the industry. It's a little different than everywhere else. Even the way they process the coffee is different than everywhere else. But the different part about Sumatra is you'll be driving down the road and someone will have 10 coffee trees in their front yard. Or someone will have a little bigger farm, but there's not a lot of big, massive farms in Sumatra. It's more little random individuals growing coffee. They'll take it into a little, little co-op in town and kind of sell their few bags of coffee. It's a unique place. They also don't, because of their soil there, I would say 90+% of their coffees are all organic. People don't know that, but they already have the natural volcanic soil. They don't need to put stuff on their coffees in Sumatra, whereas all these other regions, they're using a lot of chemicals and stuff to grow their coffees. Sumatra kind of naturally doesn't have to do that. It's a interesting region. It's different all the way around. So direct trade there, it's hard to do direct trade there. You're more buying from a region of everyone grew the coffee right around that region or that lake or that area, but it's hard to, we're not doing business with just one farmer in Sumatra. Whereas in Central America, Brazil, other places, we can go and actually do business with just that farm.
So what coffee is it? Is it Arabica or?
Yeah, I only do Arabica. I've never done any Robusta. We don't really have a demand for it here in the U.S. market, or at least not the customers I deal with. So we focus strictly on Arabica, high-end coffee, yeah.
What is your personal favorite coffee? How do you like to roast it?
I gravitate to African coffees. I like most coffees, almost all coffees at a medium roast. Once you start to roast coffees dark, if there's any oils coming out of them, anything like that, you just killed the flavor in that coffee. You might as well buy a cheaper coffee. So to keep that flavor there, it needs to be at more of a medium roast. Where I always tell people to start, and Martin can probably help you guys more from a roasting perspective when we go inside, but a good starting point, if any of you are ever roasting coffee, is there's first crack and second crack. A good starting point is right at the start of second crack. Drop that batch, try the coffee, and then kind of adjust from there. That's what I always tell like new home roasters, things like that.
How did Starbucks get away with burning that?
Well, it's funny. So
They just addicted. They sold them on the idea that's what good coffee's supposed to taste like.
well, it's funny. We get a lot of people in here that are like, they'll taste good coffee. It has acidity, it has flavor, it has fruitiness. They're like, what's wrong with this coffee? They're so used to drinking that burnt kind of dark flavor, they like it. So once they cross over and adjust to this, it's hard to go back to that. But I'm not going to ever talk bad about Starbucks. Here's what I think about Starbucks. So I think without Starbucks, all of us little guys wouldn't be as well known as we are. It's kind of like Tiger Woods was for golf, okay? Like without them, it brought a lot more awareness to the coffee industry. But at the same time, I feel like they're doing more middle of the road, lower grade coffees. That's the reason they roast them darker, is because the flavors aren't, so you can't taste that, yeah. And a lot of people get used to that flavor, and that's what they think coffee is supposed to taste like, but it's not. So, yeah.
So when you're talking about keeping up with the volumes of big traders, when you're talking about Brazilian coffee,
Mm-hmm.
are you going there and bringing up mainstream varieties, or you're focusing on specialty coffee from Brazil?
In Brazil, we're focusing on specialty coffees as well. But Brazil's a whole different animal. I mean, they're the biggest producer in the world of coffee. So they have everything from people, like I was telling you, that'll handpick the coffees, which is the way you do specialty coffee. But then they just have huge farms that are just mechanized, and they're just producing mass quantities of coffee there. So Brazil has a little bit of everything on the spectrum for sure. Whereas other regions, there's a little more smaller, do things more intimate. But we're still finding smaller farms there. They'll go to we might deal with one farmer, and he'll have a group of farmers around him that he kind of buys those cherries from, and then he'll mill them for that small farmer. We'll buy it from that mill.
So you're not into the business of bringing mainstream coffee from Brazil, like for the core of the blends.
No, I have in the past. That's another thing we do is, say a roaster comes to me and he went to Origin and he says, hey Steve, I have 50 bags I want to bring over. I'll piggyback that on my container for him, bring it in, and it might be some commodity coffee like that or commercial coffee for his blend or whatever he's doing. But do we bring it in for what we're doing here or for me to sell? No. So we focus more on the high-end quality. We have brought in some like lower grade Serato coffee. It's just very cheap. But it's not something I would ever serve. It's exactly what you said. It's more of a blend or something you might get in a grocery store from someone that's just kind of doing more less expensive coffee.
So speaking of the regions of the world, what's like more or less the percentage of
More or less what?
the percentage of the percent of trades?
That's a tough one for me. I don't know. As far as like production of who produces the most?
No, yeah, for you.
Oh, as far as what we do here. Okay. We sell more African coffees than anything. So like Ethiopia, Kenya. Ethiopia is our highest seller, and it's also happens to be, that's like when you ask me what's my favorite coffee, Ethiopian coffees. They have a lot of character. The naturals are, you grind it, your whole house smells like blueberries and strawberries and or the wash version of an Ethiopian, you're going to get citrus and floral. It's great, lemon. So African for us, and then Guatemalan second. We do a lot of Guatemala because that's a great coffee, like what you were saying about. That's what I'm drinking right now, and that's what you guys are going to drink when we go in. It's just a nice crowd pleaser. It's specialty coffee. It's great, but it won't offend the guy that has been drinking Folgers all his life either. He won't come in and go, "What's wrong with this?" So Guatemala is a great specialty coffee across the board. You can do a lot with it. You can blend it. You can serve it single or brew it. You can serve it in espresso. You can do a lot with it. So Guatemala is our second. Third is Sumatra, because I started in Sumatra. Used to be first, and then it went down a little bit. And then the other regions are we just bring them in as we find smaller coffees. I do feel in general, if you're asking me about regions, like Panama and Costa Rica, or maybe not Panama, let's just say Costa Rica, for example. A lot of years it's a struggle for me to find good coffee in Costa Rica. We'll find some. But a lot of people get kind of caught up in the name. They feel like they're in Costa Rica, or say Kona, for example. Coffee's triple the price of other coffee, but because it's called Kona, people pay the price for it when it's still not that great a coffee. So there is a whole process of finding those unique coffees at the right value.
How about that Jamaican Somebody, or not somebody, but people.
The Blue Mountain?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of people get caught up in that too. I mean, you're going to pay $110 a pound for that, and
Kona.
and it's same thing, and you don't even know if you're really getting Jamaican Blue Mountain half the time when you're getting it. I've never personally brought it in at all, so I don't even mess with it. So I've tasted some great stuff, but would I pay $110 a pound for it green? No. So.
Right. Any like, especially when you're just starting out, any like horror stories where you cut a deal, you're gonna buy this coffee, but what you get delivered, you suspect is not what you sampled.
Right.
And have you ever personally experienced a lot?
I've never had any horror stories where we get a completely different product. We've had coffees that we've cupped. They were great at origin. Say we scored them 90 points at origin. These are great, and they get here and they're more like an 86. So that's happened numerous times.
What do you do in that case? Just
It's still a great coffee.
feedback.
Yeah, I mean, we've already paid for the coffee. That's another thing about being an importer and dealing internationally. When this coffee's on the water, we're paying for it. So when it gets here, we're stuck with it. Yeah.
Okay, send it back.
So if there's rocks in the bags, yeah, it's ours. But that hasn't happened where I've gotten completely horrible coffee or something. I've heard of that, but I don't think it's
have to
happening.
have any
in this year.
inspectors on site at the time of shipment? Or
Well,
anything like that?
no, we don't have anybody on site at the time of shipment, but we're kind of the inspectors going there, and these are
Right.
most of these farmers are
It's relationship.
yeah, it's a relationship. They want to do business with you the next year. They want that as much as we do.
They want that 5-star rating.
Yeah, so we're dealing. We kind of go and see who we're dealing with first, so we don't really run into that too much. Okay.
And so now you're dealing more with the direct farms, but to get started, it was more dealing with brokers for assistance with.
The reason I want to say when I first started it was more with brokers just happened to be because I was dealing in Sumatra, and that's the way they deal there. So when I first started, yeah, I guess you could say it was more brokers or regions of that area that I was dealing with. And then as we branched out into other regions, we were able to really focus on the directly sourcing, direct trade. And by the way, let me just kind of say direct trade or directly sourcing, I think is a way bigger deal than fair trade, organic, any of that. We're paying those farmers above and beyond a premium that fair trade would pay them. We know where that money's going.
It's not going to some broker middle person.
Yeah,
going to the source.
You never know. Even though we're fair trade certified, we're organic certified, we're all that. There's a lot of these farmers that are growing coffee organically, but they don't want to pay the certification yearly. They don't, but they're still growing great organic coffee. Or fair trade, we're paying a premium. Not real sure where that money's going. We don't actually see it divvied out. Whereas I know when I'm paying that farmer directly where that money's going, and he's making more than he would if he was going through fair trade. So that's something I like to tell the public is people really need to focus on. They get caught up in organic, fair trade, different things like that. Focus on directly sourced. That's where I think like sustainability of coffee is going forward, and that's what I feel is the most important. Okay.
So you have a warehouse full of green coffee. How often do you have a new shipment, typically on average, coming in?
So this one just came in yesterday. There's about a container for you. That's Ethiopian coffee. This one just came in yesterday. We have about probably 4 containers a month come in on average.
That's like 20-footer right there?
This is about a 20-footer roughly with right here, this little block. So that's what we unloaded yesterday from Ethiopia. And there's 3 different lots on there. So 2 different naturals and a washed. If you guys are going to the show later today, we'll have those there for you to taste. So you guys can taste those 3 coffees, and I can talk to you about them a little more, okay?
So you would bring in from more than one origin on one 20-foot shipment. You might have 2 or 3 direct farmers that
Yeah,
they're coordinating
actually,
that.
usually, like especially in Central America, we could have up to 15 different little micro lots. One guy might only be a 5-bag lot, but we bought his little 5-bag lot because it tasted so good. So we've had over 15 different coffees on a container. On average, though, I would say it's around 5 different coffees on a container that we're bringing in, or 5 different lots. We call them micro lots when they're smaller lots.
If you thought about the green coffee sales, who you're selling to, the internet, the home roaster versus, is that a fairly small, because of the volume of 5 pounds compared to the green coffee going to coffee shop to a roaster?
Right, so 2 totally different animals. I mean, we're shipping out 20 bags on 2 pallets to a commercial roaster. It's way different than me selling, say, 5 pounds to you to home roast at home. and you're going to pay more money for. I'm going to charge the home roaster more money for that because of the labor to package it up, ship it out, all that, than if you were buying a full pallet of coffee or full bag.
And for freight, like the 20 bags,
Mhm.
you pretty much is regional. It's more so you're because of freight costs.
Yep.
Your 20-pound roaster guy is going to be located in this area.
No, actually, we strong online presence for home roasters. So we'll ship all over the United States, just flat rate postal, up to 20 pounds. We'll ship whatever they need, but average orders are 1 to 20 pounds for home roasters all over the U.S.
Yeah. How about for the guys buying like
So the
20 bags?
yeah, so the guys buying bags, we just use different LTL or trucking companies, whatever has the best route, cheapest route for them, and we just ship it out on the pallet. And it usually gets
All over the United States or more West Coast?
more West Coast for sure. We have a strong local following from LA to San Diego, and we ship all our own coffees from LA to San Diego. We have a route we do every week. Anything over 3 bags is free delivery, and then but we deliver our own coffees from LA to San Diego. And then anything outside of that will be delivered LTL.
Could you ship as far as like New York? And
Yeah, we do have East Coast vendors, but we're much stronger presence on the West Coast.
Congratulations.
Some days I want to say thanks to that, and some days when the stress is going on, I don't know. So it depends. But I will say this business is a unique business. The people in it are good people. They're passionate about what they do, whether they're farmers or roasters. And it's a great thing to learn about, great hobby to have at home. And coffee's a good industry. So I'm glad you guys kind of chose to come over here and took some time and just to learn. People don't understand what the whole other world of what goes on in coffee out there. So it's great to see you guys taking some interest and soaking in whatever you can.
Can you recommend a introductory home roasting roaster?
My personal, just so that you're not spending a ton of money to get started, I would just recommend the Be More, which we sell here or online. But if you were going to do that, just start with the Be More. It's a nice little, it's about a $300, like $320 roaster, not a huge investment. And it'll get you started and it'll do a good job. Okay? And so yeah, that's what I'd recommend to you. Okay? So if there's no more questions, we'll go in, we'll get some pastries and coffee, and then Martin can kind of start talking to you about roasters and roasting. Is there anything else I can kind of answer out this way?
Martin is a principal as well?
No, so when I'll go in and introduce Martin, but let me introduce him, you'll know who he is. But he's kind of, in my opinion, he is the icon of the coffee industry.
I recognize the name.
Yeah, Martin
His
Diedrich.
involvement with
We've sourced coffee together.
Okay.
We're just doing this tour together, and then I buy roasters from his brother. His brother manufactures the roaster. But Martin has 2 cafes here in Orange County.
Yeah,
He does great coffee. The guy's a mentor to me, and so he does good stuff. All right.